Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic:
People who grew up really poor. What's something middle-class people say that instantly reveals they've never struggled? My stepdad asked me if I wanted to go clothes shopping for the new school year the first year after he married my mom. I said yes, and was amazed when we went to Kohl's, not the thrift store. I got one pair of pants on clearance and 2 shirts on clearance, and told him I was ready to check out. He took me back to the clothes and picked out more for me. I nearly had a panic attack when we got to the register and it was over $100. This was late 90s, so a lot of money for clothes back then, at least to me. I started pulling stuff out to put back, and he stopped me and asked what I was doing. He paid and I got to take all of it home, and he did this every year until I moved out. Before this we weren't allowed to turn on lights in the house during the day to keep the electric bill low. Bless your mom for finding a man that is willing to look after a child that isn't his own, and bless him for being a great dad. My stepdad is the only grandpa my kids know. They know I have a birth dad, but they've never met him. I was basically an adult when they got together, but man, he makes my mom happy. Early on he didn't try to parent us, nor did he try to be cool as my mom's boyfriend. It just worked. Now they've been together half my life. My wife has never known my family without him, nor my kids. The financial strain on being a single parent, of course, stressful on my mom, but to see where they are now, can fly across the country at a drop of a hat if need be to see my family, or spoil the hell out of all the grandkids. I love him more just for the stability he offers my mom. This was my experience with a stepdad. All of a sudden there was someone in my life who was actually seeking to connect with me and make sure all of my needs were met and were a priority. It was, and still is, the best part of my childhood, and my bio parents both don't understand, because they just can't. I'd have like one outfit picked out and shyly thanking him profusely, as all of us in poverty do when someone shows us kindness, and he would send me back to the dressing room, and he would get an associate and together they would start throwing stuff over for me to try on. At first I thought it was just fun window shopping, but when he said, "Put it in the cart," over and over, I was absolutely blown away, and so excited to have clothes that weren't completely threadbare or paint stained from thrifts, etc. What a great dude. "Just ask your parents for money" was a phrase my upper-middle-class roommate used all the time in college. Dude, they didn't have any money either. He was given money from his parents and grandparents every weekend and blew it all on booze and clubbing. I struggled to figure out how to pay for my next meal. Have you considered opening a credit card? I was talking about needing to sign up for the first available start date for my job after graduation because I need the income ASAP so I can pay my rent on time that month. Why don't pause, just buy more money? The phrase, annual vacation. My ex likes to brag about how poor she grew up. Her and her family took multiple trips to Disney World a year. Like, get the fuck outta here, bitch. Our big trips were to the public boat landing for a swim. My father used to take us to the airport, not to go on a trip, just to watch the planes. Back in the day, you could go to the airport, go through a simple metal detector, and just hang at the airport. At one of the parent meetings before my oldest went on a band trip to Universal, the band director reminded the students to be on their best behavior because there would be other people at the resort and park and this might be their only trip of the year. I kept my mouth shut. For some of the kids in the band, mine included, this would be the only vacation they'd taken in years, if at all. And a trip to Universal was probably more than they could imagine. The only reason I got to go to DW was I went with the band in high school. Just quit, then, any terrible job that you desperately need and were lucky to get but need to vent about to stop from going insane. In that same vein, I've seen a supervisor fire people like crazy and say shit like, getting fired isn't the end of the world. For a lot of people without a sizable savings it is. And it's always jobs that don't pay nearly enough to accumulate those sizable savings. Literally any time at all that they say something is not that expensive. When you're poor, everything feels expensive. Got really good health and dental through my job a few years ago. Went to the dentist and they were doing a cleaning and would not stop pressuring me for x-rays. It was my first time there and they were not sure if they took my insurance, so I could not get stuck with a huge bill. A cleaning was doable, but x-rays, the person literally would not stop. Them, you should really get them. Me, I'm not sure if you take my insurance and how much is covered if you do. Them, you should really do it though, it's important. Me, I understand that, I cannot afford it. Them, it doesn't matter if you can't afford it, you really should get it. Me, it does matter if I can't afford rent or groceries or my car payments. Which will make future dentist visits impossible. I am negative money before the copay, so unless you are giving out x-rays for free, I won't be doing it. If you have time, this is why I suggest going to a dental school for dental work. They actually will give out procedures for free if they think it would be good for the student to get some more practice in. Burger flippers don't deserve a living wage, they're all kids and teenagers. Clearly someone who has never worked in fast food, ever. It's also a great tell that they don't bother seeing service workers as individual human beings, or they would have noticed that the people working at fast food restaurants they go to aren't all kids and teenagers. They see them as failures if they are over 18, and their families as failures if under 18. This is also the dumbest argument. That means all minimum wage jobs should only be open from about 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., when it's appropriate for high schoolers to be working after school jobs. So no more grocery stores, restaurants, gas stations, basically every chain, specialty store there is, equipment rental. The list goes on as to what has to be closed most of the day now, because those jobs are only for teenagers. It's fine, because all the rest of the 8 to 4 shifts can be filled in by older folks who just work part-time to keep from getting bored in retirement, not because they can't afford to retire. Face with rolling eyes. Had a cousin once get laid off from her job at the same time as me. Made this comment, do you think you're gonna try to find a job right away or live off your savings interest for a while? My what? This is either back long enough where savings accounts gave decent interest or this person has so much money in savings that the pitiful modern rates still yield usable monthly income. I doubt they meant live on the dividends from your savings account. They probably just meant dipping into your emergency fund, etc. to augment whatever you're getting from unemployment. Edit, I totally missed that the GP said savings interest, specifically. I'm dumb, that is wild. Diagnoses and treatment for various life-altering but not necessarily debilitating illnesses, disorders. I grew up pretty poor and am now in grad school with a lot of people that grew up without a lot of financial stress, and something that sticks out to me is how many of them have some sort of ailment, allergy, disorder, and/or syndrome that probably would have just gone undiagnosed, untreated in the community I grew up in. Now, I'm not arguing that the people with these conditions need to rub some dirt on it, but rather healthcare and health literacy should be more accessible to all so that more people can figure out if they have something going on that is making their life harder. My spouse had a tongue tie until 10 years old, should have had speech therapy afterward. Didn't. Part of it was his parents not wanting modern medicine or government help, and the other part was that they were already very, very poor and still had 7 kids. I grew up poor but with parents who cared enough to get government assistance to help. And poor, not poverty. He grew up poverty. My primary years were the upper level of the low socioeconomic community. We then moved to a nicer area in my teens with better school opportunities. I learned what was not normal or not to say to friends in both brackets, and sometimes it was the same but for opposite reasons. Example, our freezer was always jam-packed full of portioned meat or batch-cooked meals. To my rich friends, they didn't need to bulk buy when things were cheap, but to my less well-off friends they couldn't afford the upfront cost to bulk buy. I'm from the UK and from the wrong side of the tracks. I was one of the few to pass my 11+. This was a test all kids took, certainly my area, and the top 100 or so was selected to go to a grammar school. Apart for 1 or 2 of us, everyone else was prime middle class. I remember my mum and dad scouring second-hand shops for all the cricket equipment I needed, art supplies, and other paraphernalia that the school naturally assumed parents could easily afford. Can remember a couple of my classmates balking at my packed lunch and saying, just get a few pounds from your parents. When my cricket bat broke they were shocked that my parents couldn't just shell out £30 for a new one, back in the 80s. To this day, I've never felt so out of my comfort zone than when I was at that school. There's also the matter of storage space. Even if you can afford to buy in bulk you may not have anywhere to put 200 rolls of toilet paper. Or anyway, besides the bus, to get it home. Speaking from the opposite side of things, in college I was dating a girl who grew up lower income and I mentioned that we had boats growing up and she incredulously replied, boats? Multiple. I didn't realize my family was wealthy until college because I grew up in a bubble with other rich kids and was relatively middle class compared to some of them. My hometown is in the top 15 wealthiest towns in the country for reference. I knew kids who didn't think they were rich cause they didn't own a boat when all their neighbors did, yeah. Raised my kids in an area like this and we were doing fine but we didn't have helicopter money. When my daughter was in 5th grade one had to explain the disparity to her. Not everyone has a second house in Costa Rica. This, to me, is the most insidious thing about wealth. It can isolate you from what the majority experience, and these isolated rich people often form very staunch opinions of how less wealthy people should behave, what they should do, and vote on these opinions in large numbers. These people don't often even realize how uninformed they are. I say this exact thing when people talk badly about the homeless. Mental health and addiction are horrible. People see choices. I see broken childhoods. People who were taken care of as children don't realize how bad it can get when you don't have enough money, or how their parents spend their money. Or how wealth can cover up for those problems. I dated a daughter of 2 millionaires and the family did not talk about or deal with alcoholism or substance abuse because those family members always had a roof over their heads and their needs provided for. The cousin showed up high as a kite on painkillers one Christmas, but as long as he had on a dress shirt no one cared. Oh, addiction does not discriminate. Poor, rich, young, old, what you say is true. Enabling happens across all walks of life. I see head injuries. I worked on a study of people experiencing homelessness, and we had a questionnaire and interview. We'd ask if they'd ever had a concussion or brain injury, and almost everyone would say no. But in the interviews they'd tell us about being knocked out a few times in sports or hit by a car as a kid, or the multiple times they'd been beaten by a guardian and blacked out. We had to really reword things to make it clear that any time you hit your head could have been a concussion, especially if they lost consciousness. Turns out some 90% of the folks experiencing homelessness we talked to had had the bells rung multiple times before the age of 18, and usually a few more times in adulthood. That is actively bad for a developing brain and is closely correlated with later substance use. It's even worse if they were injured badly enough to need opioid pain management. We gotta be more careful with these kids, man.